হ্যাঁ ম্যাম দাঁড়ান যাচ্ছে এবার অন কর রেজিস্টার স্যার এসে গেছেন
ঢুকে না
হ্যাঁ ম্যাম রেডি
So very good evening to you all. On behalf of the Department of History, Rabindra Bharati University welcomes Weblecture in the Weblecture on New Perspectives in South Asian History, and to have Professor Deepak Kumar to deliver relevance of contemporary history. Professor Kumar is a name that needs no introduction. But since I have the honor of introducing him, I take the privilege of saying a few words on his behalf. Since 1998, he taught history of science and education at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Earlier, he had taught at Kurukshetra University and headed the University of Science divisions of CSIR and NISTADS. In Sir, he founded an international commission on Science and Empire, IUAHSDS, and remained its president till 2001. Professor Kumar has researched, taught, and published on the history of science, technology, and medicine for more than 4 decades. He has lectured at several universities in India and abroad and held visiting fellowships and professorships at the universities of Cambridge, London, Leiden, Sheffield, Tehran, York in Toronto, Canada, Max Planck University, Berlin, Kolkata, Smithsonian University, Wisconsin University, known for his work, Time Raj, his one of his contributions in the field of history of science in India. He has co-edited several books in describing has process of transition and it worked towards a scientific ceremony. Workshop encapsulates and contemporary and a fascinating read, telling different layers of political constitutions, peppered with personal anecdotes. Professor Kumar, sir, the second is yours. Over to sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity given by the Department of History, Rabindra Bharati University. I had several occasions to visit your department and meet some of you, my best friends. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. Now, I'm glad that taking advantage of the technology, you have decided to connect to our students and colleagues through this powerful medium. And as a student of history, when you asked me to think about a topic, I thought of contemporary India or contemporary history. Though I have not been trained in contemporary history, my whatever little work I have done is on 19th century India, to some extent early 20th century, that's all. And whenever I was reading or trying to formulate my views on the concept of history and historiography, I always felt that for a historian, it's important to maintain some distance. While reading, if you take a book close to your eyes, your vision is likely to get blurred. You have to keep a little distance. So I thought this is what happens when we deal with contemporary times. It is not that I'm not aware of the significance, extreme significance of the present that we live in. But for the sake of the so-called freedom from biases, one feels that, it's better to keep little distance. However, as I grew older and older, felt like reflecting more on present situation and my own place in it. Probably self-reflections sometimes overtake you. It happens, it's a natural process. And for the last 10 years, I gradually immersed into it. This is what led to the publication of my book, Trishanku Nation, where I talk about memory, self, and society. Memory, as we all know, is probably the only possession, dharohar, that nature has gifted us. And it is on the basis of memory that lots of our activities, both mundane and otherwise, are based upon. Secondly, the second aspect of self and the society, I hope you'd forgive me for saying so, but yeah, a time comes when both begin to merge. And one starts seeing these two, the self and the society, as two sides of the same coin. This merger of the self with others, merger of the micro with the macro, is probably crucial to an understanding of contemporary history. Now let me move a little bit on what I mean when I use the term contemporary. What's my inference about it? People have talked about, written a great deal. Contemporary, of course, involves the present. Our colleagues who deal with sociology, political science, economics, many other sister disciplines, they have greater expertise to talk about what constitutes contemporary. However, for me, as a student of history, I'm aware that it has been argued that all history is contemporary history. I won't go up to that extent. I would only feel that contemporary is too close to us, and there is nothing wrong in this closeness. Absolutely nothing wrong in it. To find one's own place as an exercise in self-introspection, it is contemporary that helps you. And gradually, one can extend the boundaries of contemporary. How contemporary is contemporary? Number one. Number two, how do we extend it? We keep extending. It is possible. There are different phases of historical development. We have distant past, very distant past, which we call ancient. We have less distant past, which you may call medieval. Then we have near past. which is little more closer to us. And then, of course, the contemporary, where we are, the yesterday. Contemporary doesn't mean that only your own lifetime makes it relevant. How limited my own lifetime is, or my own perception of a life is or should be. For example, if one wants to understand 21st century, in which we all are living right now, we need to look at the last quarter of the 20th century, because it's so close to us. The last quarter of 20th century is contemporary, no doubt. It's not only 21st century, but if we want to understand, we have to go back little. But if you want to understand the last quarter of 20th century, you may have to go to the third quarter of the 20th century. That is 1950 to 75. And as you enter that period, which is Nehruvian period, when some of us are born, we are very lucky to have seen so much. If you want to understand that period, then suddenly you are pushed to the second quarter of the 20th century. That is 1925 to 50. And if you want to grapple with that period, you are pushed to even earlier. That is the first quarter of the 19th century. So, Gandhi, Tagore, many more, they become almost contemporary. I can feel their presence. If you are sensitive enough, of course. So they all become contemporary. And they're so close to us. And now, if you want to understand the first quarter of the 19th century, of the 20th century, then you have to go back to the last quarter of the 19th century. That is 1875 onward. Similarly, you keep extending. So contemporary somehow cannot be confined to a very, very small period, maybe only your lifetime. No. Keeps on. This is the one point, one argument. I may be wrong, but this is what I thought that I bring to I submit for your consideration. That contemporary is not only about the existing present. Our present is heavily dependent upon near past. Our close forefathers, parents, grandparents, so forth, their time. All this weighs so heavily on your shoulders. They are there. You can talk to them, you can learn from them, you can read them. Who deny the contemporary relevance of Tagore or Gandhi or many more? You have all. If you look at the global history, you have hundreds and hundreds of very important characters trying to tell you something, provided you have the antenna to receive it. Sometimes we close our antenna, it's fine, it's good for you, don't listen. Sometimes people don't want to listen, it's their choice. But you also have the choice to listen to them. They are there, they're very close to us. It is said that since humans think, and that thinking is expressed in written words, writings, etc., those written documents, sometimes unwritten things also have survived for centuries. So why not go further back? Yes, we can. You know, these days, for last 2 decades or 3 decades, last 3 decades, I suddenly found that one individual has become a household name. And he was born, he died 5 centuries ago. Baba. I was worried, I just didn't know what great thing he had done to merit such a huge significance that he becomes a household name. Is he contemporary? But he has influenced contemporary politics as nothing else would have. In his name, a lot of things have been done. They are being done, and probably they will be done in future as well. Can we extend it 5 centuries back? Can we push the clock back further? How far? You know, as a student of history, young, when I was very, and read a great deal on Ashoka, the Mauryan Empire, also looked at Kautilya's Arthashastra, but I never felt them of contemporary significance or contemporary. I could see that, it's a huge distance, time distance. Of course, it's part of my inheritance, even before Ashoka, the Buddhism, Vedic period, all this is part of my inheritance, no doubt about it. But I was aware of the distance I was dealing with. And it was not affecting my present in the way now certain things are affecting my present. My existence, my generation's existence. Well, do forgive me for being a little ambitious and presumptuous when I use the term my. Probably some of you, if not all of you, are included. My is not a very limited my. And do forgive me for saying so. So, for dealing with distant past, I never felt that kind of association as I feel while dealing with early 20th century, late 19th century. Probably that was one of the reasons why, for my own research area, I chose 19th century. I was very comfortable with it. And gradually, I could move. Even to deal with it 2 centuries is a huge task. 1920th, such a huge period. So, my second submission was that contemporary we shouldn't take a selfish understanding of contemporary. Contemporary can be extended, is deeply influenced by the near past. In fact, it's a product of the near past. And we need to look critically at whatever happened. My third submission would be that should contemporary history be confined only to politics or political understanding of the present? In journalism, in newspapers, in books written by journalists, in, which you enjoy reading, Kuldeep Nair, Sankarshan Thakur, many others, newspaper editorials, etc. They're so engrossing. But most of them deal with political aspects of our existence, which is crucial. I'm not saying it is not, it's extremely crucial. These days, everything becomes politics. Right now, you see how on agriculture, is being fought over political domain. Issues on agriculture being fought over political domain. So, finally, many of the roads lead you to politics, but there can be many ways one can look at contemporary. For example, look at literature, look at history of literature. Are the protagonists whom our laureates prepared with so much care, curated with so much care, are they not contemporary? Is Hori of Premchand, Godan, is not contemporary? Is Devnath Ghosh of Ganadevta or Parmesh Acharya of Sanskara, Anantamurti Sanskara, or Dhodai, Satyanath Bhadri, are they not contemporary? Are they not alive now? They are. You have to just look around, move around, and you'll find they're alive. Literature, which was produced 100 years ago, even 200 years ago, and some of the masterpieces which are, of course, millennia old, like Mahabharata or so forth, they are alive. We all go back and, find our own Karna or Krishna or Arjuna in that. They are there. But while going to distant past, we tend to forget our close relatives. I would rather feel that Dhodai is closer to us. He also thought of a Ramarajya, writing in 1930s, 40s. Satyanath Bhadri was, influenced by the national movement and so forth. And he composes a Charitamanas, Dhodai Charitamanas. Immediately, the other Charitamanas comes to your mind, Tulsi's Ram Charitamanas. There is the concept of Ramarajya there. While some may think it was his weakness, probably confused people gave wrong signals. But this concept remains. How this concept has undergone what you may call distortion, depending upon the way you look at it, of course. Whether establishment of a temple can lead to Ramarajya or not is of right now contemporary significance. And it also depends on how you look at it. Distortions do happen. In history, if distortions are not there, the jing would be gone. I'm not scared of, I'm not very unhappy with. It happens because this is how distortions come, because of the perception. Because of the debate that a historian must necessarily engage with. Because of the difference of opinion which any kind of history must entail. History is not theology. No. History is not faith, much less mythology. So you can't build contemporary history on the basis of myths. Or faith. Only saying that millions of people believe so and so, therefore it is true or it must be true. This argument would be difficult to accept. But distortions do take place because history is significant in the game of power. As I argued earlier, that history is our only dharohar, memory. This is the very powerful, what you call civilizational wealth. This is what we have inherited, our forefathers gave us. It's not land that we have inherited. It's not houses that we have inherited. It's the ideas, it's the history that we inherit. It's not only institutions like Asiatic society that we have inherited. What Asiatic society would be without its motto, which William Jones had put. Whatever occurs in nature and whatever is performed by man, humans, would be the area of activity, would be the objective of the society. It is this idea that building one Park Street houses and who would say it is not contemporary? It is. Only 2 centuries old. But its significance, its relevance is still there. If we don't realize, it's our mistake. It's our weakness, folly. But it's there. So, I was again talking about distortions. Distortions are useful when you try to make history handmaid of politics. In power game, institutions have also played a role in that power game. The British created institutions for their own benefit, of course. We also benefited, but and colonialism was no philanthropy. No, not at all. So, we need to look at distortions more in terms of the way it is used for capturing power. Most of the groups have done it. And there would be always a struggle. Knowledge has always been used for. In the 5th, 6th, 7th century AD, Brahmins used that knowledge to consolidate their hold. You have feudalism, you have lots of other things which comes. You have Kalidas, no doubt, but at the same time you have money. And many other things kept happening. And all this are being used today for one's own respective objective. Some time ago, I heard a politician in BHU went and talked about Skandagupta. Historians have ignored Skandagupta. I marveled, I said, how does he say this? Skandagupta, I also read as an undergraduate student. So this would be wrong to say that Skandagupta has been ignored. Or many other names are taken. Hemu has been ignored. Maybe Maharana Pratap has been ignored. And recently you have seen in the news very interesting news that Agra Museum has been named after Chhatrapati Shivaji. Yes, you know, how imaginative we are, of course. Oh, I marvel at it. Poor Akbar, what he had to do with Agra. But anyway, but this is what politics is. They create icons, they destroy icons to suit their respective their respective to justify their respective actions. And all this is being done democratically. We voted, we did it. I can't say that, you know, they are people's representative. If they say they have the reason. And they alone are not responsible. We are also responsible. As a student of history, I accept my responsibility in coming to a stage where we have already arrived. But other than politics, we need to look at several other aspects. Politics should, of course, be overpowering. In 18th century, it was overpowering, no doubt. 19th century, it was overpowering. 20th, 21st, it doesn't seem to be different. And it will be there. But if we bring the pressure of other areas of history to the fore, then probably we may be able to influence, if not control politics. What are those other areas? For example, agriculture, health, medicine, social reform, literature, education, pedagogy, and lot more. For all these issues, we can go back to near past, draw lessons, and empower ourselves with arguments put forward. People will see to it. Not all the people are blind people. Not everybody is a bhakta, you know. They will listen. When bhaktas may listen, they also have eyes. I hope they have conscience also. They will listen. We have to bring these. Now, agriculture, it is the example of contemporary. Right now, it is being discussed. Yesterday, my parliament passed the important bills in 2 hours or so with very few members present. I wouldn't go to the details of the merit or demerit of. Of course, if you want to open up the sector, fine. Our Prime Minister has promised to double the income of the farmer, and corporates have if they have right over my mines, if the corporates have right over oil, if they have right over the data, over the internet, all kinds of things, they can have right over the rice and pulse of the people also. Let them. Let's try this. It is an experiment. But before going for it, we should also look at how our forefathers grappled with this issue. I was wondering how Chotu Ram, 1930s, 40s, Unionist Party, Punjab, he was very popular. In 1942, he freed the agricultural community of undivided Punjab from the clutches of the Banyas. How would he have felt? What N.G. Ranga or Chaudhry Charan Singh would have felt? They're too close to us. Charan Singh is not very far. No, N.G. Ranga was there. Very few people know about him. He was a remarkable parliamentarian and a freedom fighter who raised the issue of agriculture. If you go a little further down, then you have Welker Report 1892, which when I read, I felt it is as if it is relevant today. Most of the recommendations of the Welker Report. Of course, in 1892, there were no Adanis or other big corporates, but there were Sahukars, there were Zamindars. And taking them into account, Welker gives very radical recommendations which the British government itself found difficult to implement and shelved the agriculture is so complex that you cannot deal in only in terms of commerce. Agriculture is more than commerce. So is health. In a tropical climate like ours, I have always argued two things are very crucial. And as part of contemporary problem, contemporary history, two things are one is agriculture, the other health. Agriculture ensures security, the real security, not the border security, food security. We have seen how devastated our countrymen had been in earlier times during British Raj, late 19th century, 1918, 20, 1942, Durbikho, how we perished like millions in matter of days and weeks. So, agriculture shouldn't be handled only from a commercial sense. I referred to literature some time ago. I would like to bring to your notice this very remarkable novel by Fakir Mohan Senapati, that 6 acres and a third, where into the rural India, rural Orissa, rural India, so comes out stark and with so much humor and wit. Absolutely astounding, and goes very deep into it. The problem is, I can't bring those things to our highly erudite members of the parliament. The problem is this: they may not have even heard of Fakir Mohan Senapati. They may not have heard of Hori. What do you do? They know Adani more than Hori. And which is very natural because they are the beneficiaries. वो सारा केयर फंड वो सब जितने होते हैं उसमें वही लोग न देता है. What Hori can give? He had hardly 4 annas. While he was dying, his wife gives 4 annas. This is the Gaudan you take. The people who have the purse will control. This is what we drive. People who have the money will control. Very natural. Who am I to say it is shameful? No. I have no right. Because I am myself a parasite on the government. Who pension nahi dega, so I will be in trouble. I live on this and I am happy with that only. What right a parasite has to criticize the giver? But what to do? I'm a citizen at the same time. So I can't help, and somehow the same society had educated me to some extent. So I can't help reflecting upon. Since I have read Fakir Mohan, I can't help not remembering him. The difficulty in today's time is that half literate, half educated people have jockeyed into power. This was not the case in my father's time or in the national movement. Look at the national movement. Thousands of glorious names come up, not hundreds, thousands. You may criticize the British government whatever way, but education, they imparted, and all these came up in large numbers thanks to that education. And they were not greedy people. Tagore himself, a Jamindar, talks about microfinancing. He's worried about agricultural reconstruction. History Niketan, not only as an educationist, here is an agricultural man. He's not only a poet, he's a chasha at the same time. Talks about Magrza, don't greed. Gandhi talked about trusteeship. They were fools. Were they? They need to be brought out when you are dealing with agricultural issues. We need to remember them. But then when things don't function, who will remember? Who will remember this in our legislative assembly or anywhere else or parliament? Who will talk about? And who is there to listen? So is the case with health. Today we are in the midst of pandemic, and people keep talking about what happened earlier, century ago, 1918, earlier, plague, cholera, and so forth. And we have suddenly realized that because our investment after independence, which we should have, in public health was so meager that we are in the soup that right now we are in. Had there been a public health infrastructure, village unit, health unit there, primary health care proper, things might have been, little better. China could do it. It is said China exported the virus. But the Chinese economy and society has been least affected. We are the worst off. Even the mighty Americans are in bad shape. Why? Because China had the institutions which could take care of. Our institutions have crumbled. And in place of institutions, at a micro level, local level, what is being offered is Ayushman Bharat, insurance, which again is commerce. I'm not opposed to commerce, but you can't deal everything, agriculture, health, education, everything you commercialize. National Education Policy, NEP, commerce. Can we go beyond? Can we look beyond? If we can't go, I understand. There are limitations. Of course, I know. It's not that money grows on tree and the government can print at will. No. People talked about right from 90s, I think 30 years ago, people talked about privatization, liberalization, and many things. I had a very funny experience. I was working those days with CSIR, which is a huge government body. We received a direction from the Director General CSIR and the Minister, whatever, saying that we must earn the employees must earn 30% of their salary. Probably you will also get a letter, love letter like this. You are supposed to earn. Then this money, when it came, I smiled. I said, what do you mean by, where do I go to? I am a poor historian. Of course, you give me salary, but 30% of my salary, where will I, what do I do? Even if I put a lipstick on, stand on the road, nobody would touch me. क्या करोगे? क्या चाहते हो? What the government wants? What this commercialization is? I wrote in a very strong reply. Our poor director, he said, oh, please, Deepak, don't write such things. Director, these are government, just gloss over it. Forget it. You don't have to earn, fine. And so far I haven't earned. I don't know. How do you make money? How can you make money out? Look, out of an educational enterprise. Look, today you talk of privatization. Was Shantiniketan not a private effort? This was privatization. This was a private effort. BHU, Mahamana built it up from scratch and through donations. Was it not a private effort? Syed Ahmad, was it not private? What are we talking about privatization today? We need to distinguish between privatization and commercialization. It is not that I am opposed to commerce, but there has to be legitimate, ethical boundary, which should be maintained. What is wrong in ethics? In biology also we talk about bioethics, isn't it? What is wrong in it? Without ethical considerations, the vaccine preparation and many other things should go for a toss. We need to keep. So, in contemporary history, I would like to conclude in another 5 or 10 minutes. My earlier argument was, as I said, that contemporary is not really only today or last 10, 20 years or what is in one generation. No. Contemporary involves a couple of generations at least. They are too close to us and we need to learn from them. We keep them in mind. When we deliberate upon our present, whatever aspect we deliberate upon, let us take advantage of that. And we have been such a lucky civilization. We had such bright people, absolutely world class, scientists, philosophers, thinkers, educationists, political leaders, economists, all. Why can't we take advantage? Their advantage, laureates, while we deliberate upon contemporary. And the other submission was that we go little, beyond politics. Of course, politics should be there, but if we go beyond, then we would be able to manage politics little better. That will probably improve the quality of debates. I have several times asked my students to work on legislative assembly debates, the parliamentary debates, and see the difference. The way debates were done in 30s, 40s, 20s to 40s, the debates which came in 50s, 60s, 70s, and today's debates, huge difference. This difference is not because, education went down. No. The quality of the debate has gone down because our contemporary legislators, they refuse to learn from their own predecessors. Most of the time people talk of constitution. In court also, all the time, these days it is so, I feel pain whenever you read about the activities of the Supreme Court, its judgment, etc. Sometime as a citizen I read. Unfortunately, I have a law degree also long ago. 75 I got a law degree. So little bit of interest. But instead of talking about, and look at it, our constitution has undergone 104 amendments. Can you imagine? That means there is something, we talk of the basic structure of the constitution, etc. But even then, this constitution within 70 years had 104 amendments. So, do we still live in the time of Manu? When there is one prescription, then 10 exceptions? If you do this, you will be fined that much, but if you are a Brahmin, you will get little less, much less punishment. How many exceptions? We live in the world of exceptions only. Everybody claims exceptional status. Why? So many amendments. American Constitution, very few. The First Amendment still remains one of the foundation, freedom of. Today, every day we discuss freedom. Every day we talk about whether this TV channel has this much freedom or not. Whose freedom? Character assassinations are done openly, day in, day out. So we talk about constitution. I would rather say go to the Constituent Assembly debates. More important than my own constitution is the Constituent Assembly debates. In the debates, the soul of constitution comes out. Constitution doesn't talk about secularism. It was added by Mrs. Gandhi. And people are very unhappy about it. They may even do away with it. Fine, do away. Remove secularism, remove socialism, whatever. You remove whatever you feel like. You have the power. You can do. Well, जब 105 amendment हो गया, 10 amendment और कर दो, 50 और कर दो, क्या जाता है? But the soul of the constitution lies in the Constituent Assembly debates. If you look into the debates, the quality of it, salute our forefathers. Despite differences, stark differences, huge differences, this draft was done. Many nations are still struggling with their constitution. We did it in 3.5 years. Our forefathers. Pakistan kitna baar constitution ulta ho gaya. Nepal is still struggling with constitution. Many other places. We have such a marvelous document, we have such a marvelous tradition of discussion and debate. Instead of looking at it, instead of deriving benefit from it, we are going for short-term solutions, and which are basically led by our political considerations, very small political considerations. How is it that a nation which produced only a century ago such large-hearted people have shrunk to this state of affair? My understanding of contemporary history includes my forefathers and their understanding of their past and their present, which taken together becomes my inheritance. And I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of it. But it also makes us responsible for the things that go wrong. It also creates a little bit of despondency. But at the same time, if we look back, it will give us the strength to come back, to stand again on our feet. The future our children who will inherit this. We need to tell them through our curriculum that we had great forefathers. We had very thoughtful people, and they have left behind so much to study. And Indian civilization has been a thinking civilization, not a civilization of robots, not a civilization of only money-minded people. Of course, we had Jagat Seths all the time, who decided the fate of the country. Clive won thanks to Jagat Seth, not to anyone else. And finally, that fellow was captured in Mir Qasim, and he died in my town, Munger. Anyway, but they will always be there. But despite this influence of money, muscle, power, which you see in today's politics, there are many other areas which make one optimistic about our past, optimistic about our present, and confident about our near future. Thank you very much for the opportunity. My apologies for being disjointed, and but I hope you enjoyed it. I invite you to read more and more about the people whose names came to me came across in this talk. Thanks again for your indulgence.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there'll be many questions. Though I don't see many in the chat box yet, I'm sure I'm going to receive a lot of questions soon. Just to say, set the ball rolling by
The voice cracks. Is there a problem, Bipasha?
No, sir.
Is the voice cracking? Is it okay? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes,
Am I audible?
yes, ma'am.
Better.
Is it better now? Yes.
Yes.
I will just. That was a very thought-provoking lecture, sir. It was. Thank you very much. Just to set the ball rolling, are there questions from? We'll just take a few questions. There are questions in the chat box. I'll just present to sir. So you mentioned that contemporary is deeply influenced by the near past. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Contemporary is deeply influenced by the near past. So the recent happenings in the Indian political scenario, could you, sir, reflect on them and try to give us a picture of their influence from the past? Particularly the measures taken by the present government regarding CAA. Yes, sir. That's a
Yes,
past history.
yes. Now, the legislative measures which were introduced to deal with a specific problem, dealing with a specific state, the northeast of India, has now become a huge issue. In fact, this has a very complex history, as you know, going back to almost 60, 70 years of migration and so forth. In the different governments, unfortunately, took only short term measures and they didn't realize the enormity of the issue. And those short term measures didn't help. There were several accords, you know, there were several accords in Assam, in Nagaland, in Tripura, etc., and to satisfy the local aspirations. And but these accords were uh, followed more in rupture than in acceptance. They were gradual. They were more in not followed properly. The result was that it became a very complex issue. Now, with a government with a majority, with a absolute majority, felt that it can cut the Gordian knot. There are two ways to solve a problem. If you have a knot, if you have a very knotty problem at hand, then you try to gradually you remove the strings and see if it can work. But if it is not, then you try to do it with you just cut a sword. This is what Alexander is supposed to have. The story goes that he cut the Gordian knot with a sword. And he was immediately fitted for that. But sword doesn't work always, my friend. Sword has a very limited use. People say of course, you can rule by sword, but not for all the time to come, not for long. Even the British used persuasion along with coercion. So there we faltered, and CAA, which says that it doesn't delegitimize anybody and grants legitimacy to certain people who had to leave because of certain unfortunate circumstances, has created a lot of. But if CA could have been tolerated had it not been followed by the another threat of what you call the National Population Register and all kinds of things, the markings. Now, this was not needed. All this was really not needed. Citizenship is an issue which is of not only political value but extreme economic, social, and emotive value. So the government's step, to my mind, is not correct. They earned in it, they paid a price for it, and thanks to the intervention of Corona, things have gone on the back burner, but it will come up again. It will come up again. This needs to be resolved. This needs to be resolved at the level of coexistence and assimilation. Exclusion, I understand that how long you'd keep on. There are arguments how long we keep on assimilating. But this is what our civilization has been. We have been assimilative civilization. And there is nothing wrong in it. So we should, this politics of exclusion would lead to more frustration, even violence. That would be worse. The remedy probably would be worse than the disease itself. So let us look for a remedy which tries to satisfy different groups. When all this was going on, one of my friend who was Vice Chancellor of Tripura, Silchar, Central University, he found himself to be a non-citizen. And some other friends, they wrote to me, they were crying that how could I be, they are there for so many generations. And they found themselves out of. So Supreme Court did something, I don't know, there was some ground level difficulties, what happened, but there are lakhs of people who were who ran the risk of disenfranchisement. And this kind of thing could have been easily avoided. But if the state takes a very rigid stand, then things will become difficult. Let this has to be things have to be sorted out at the level of discussion, and it is possible. It is possible. Jayaprakash Narayan, he went to Nagaland way back in '65. Things could have been solved then and there. But sometimes our politicians themselves, they want a little wound to continue to fester. And later on, what it calls for is a major surgery. Shouldn't we avoid surgery and treat the wound at the very beginning? Thank you. Next question.
We have some questions, sir. This is from Orko Prabho Shengupto. He writes, Sir, you talked about distortion of history, but isn't history always distorted reflection of past? Power will always try to distort history to suit its own end. How can we counter it?
Oh, it's so easy to counter. You have to look for the evidence. Ask them for evidence. I went to BHU, IIT BHU, a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, to give a talk. And when moment I started, it was something on Science Society or something like this. So the moment I started, within 5-8 minutes, and this was all, they were all lecturers, they were the new recruits, naye rangroot the, and they had to be given some kind of orientation or whatever it is. And these are all IIT, first-rate appointments must be. So one fellow got up, asked me, Sir, what are you saying? We had such a great tradition of technology and so forth. And then in 2 minutes, another fellow got up. He said, we had Pushpak Viman. How can you say technology bhi hai? Hamare yahan bahut advanced technology tha, everything. I tried to argue. Then another 5 minutes, third person got up. So next 10-15 minutes, there were 8-10 people who were asking questions. I kept my cool. I said, look, I'm going to answer. Let me finish my talk for 45 minutes. Then you ask the question, we will discuss. My host was very embarrassed. My host told me, they have got this impression, unfortunately. Since you are from JNU, they all think you must be a communist and therefore you should be, tickled. So they are doing that. I said, never mind. I very coolly, for 3 hours, I argued with them. 3 hours. Finally, I always talked about, give me the evidence. If evidence is there, I am ready to accept. Tumko Pushpak Viman udana hai, udao. I came to you by Air India. Give me my Air India fare and I am happy. Now, look at it. This is an institution established by Mahamana. Who would say Mahamana was not Malviya was not a Hindu? He had all the paggad, he was a proper Brahmin with everything. He was president of Hindu Mahasabha as well as president of Indian National Congress. He was close to Gandhi. Gandhi considered him an elder brother. Here is a man, if you look at his dissenting note in the Industrial Commission report of 1918, he is utterly modern. He talks about technical education, he talks about science education, all kinds of things. And BHU has the earliest department devoting to mining engineering and so forth. He had modern medicine as well as Ayurveda, Unani all together in his medical faculty. So how can you, because a different set of outlook and power, you are trying to overturn your own icon, Madan Mohan Malviya. Give the proof. So it's very easy to counter. Look at it, Vivekananda. He's now saffron robed and he's the idol, you know. Even Ramakrishna Mutt these days is probably shifting. I'm told, I read in the newspaper reports that Belur is likely to develop political ambitions, which would be very unfortunate. But Vivekananda never used the term Hindu. No. He was a Vedantin. He talks of Vedanta. Gandhi called himself Sanatani. In fact, the term Hindu comes into use only in late 18th, early 19th century. British used it more. We never used it to describe ourselves. The Muslim rulers didn't use this term. They used Brahmins. Birahman और बहुत से बहुत तो काफिर, हमने उनको मलेच्छ कहा, बस ऐसे ही चलता रहा आपस में गपशप. So you know the whenever anybody uses examples from the past, tell them, give me the proof, and I'm happy. The proof must be, you know, I have also been a student of history, written some articles, some books, and there is a cross verification. A historian also has an imagination, but historical imagination is limited, is bound by evidence. Different kinds of literary, archaeological, oral, all kinds of evidence, cross-checking. Laureates are not bound by this. A laureate's imagination can go, you know. He can describe you as moon-faced and you are beautiful. He has the liberty to describe you the way they want. Historian doesn't have that liberty. If I find you poxmarked, I will say you are poxmarked. And I have written in my Trishanku Nation that Mother India doesn't look that beautiful to me. There are so many mining. If I bring out those mining things on the map of the physical map of India, I will find this Mother India. I mean, it's like a poxmark. The whole country has been dug. Mining industry, if you go deeper into it, you find out. So, how do I see the beauty of Mother India when my fellow people are dying on road? When I was a young Jilla school student in Munger, you know, milk powder was given to us. We were 10-year-old and, you know. So I was very surprised. I said, I have seen milk comes from the cow. Goru se hai, to mere paas bhi goru thi. How is it that this is a powder? This powder was a technological marvel. Then I asked my teacher. The teacher said, okay, this comes from Denmark. Then I didn't know what Denmark is, so he took me to the atlas, showed me in the school library. Luckily, those days library was there in the school. Showed me this is Denmark, and I was absolutely stunned because in my class 3 textbooks it was written कि दूध दही की नदी बहती थी देश में. तो जब दूध दही की नहीं बहती थी तो ये पाउडर कहाँ से आ गया? So I asked this. I was very disturbed, and I used to throw this milk on the grass, you know, line laga ke they used to give. Everybody would be drinking out. But this is true that lots of things are being lost. I was told that when this government came to power in 2015 and so, Ministry of Home, the newspaper reports, I'm not sure about its veracity, but that lakhs of documents and files were burned. The archivists also remove files in the name, because they can't preserve everything, in the name of what they call weeding out. Weed out. But this weeding out should be a responsible process. And they should take the advice from historians, practicing historians, what to keep, what not to keep. Unfortunately, they will keep mostly political files. This was true of the British period also. Home political documents you will find easily. Non-cooperation movement, when I was working in National Archive, non-cooperation movement, those files were sorry to use the word, defiled 100 times, 200 times. But a files relating to Geological Survey of India was issued for the first time to my name. Nobody had seen it. It was written 150 years ago, and then it was live. Luckily, it was preserved so that I could see it. Politics will continue to, political history will continue to attract most attention. There is no doubt about it. So, non-cooperation file, your CID file, your civil disobedience files, home political files, every state archive you will find they have been used number of times, 100 times. But there are many other insignificant files on mortality, on disease, on opening of schools, on mining, on many other areas which haven't been seen. And I keep on telling my students from different parts of the country that whichever language you know, whichever archive you can go, look for those things which have not been uncovered. So contemporary history is no threat, don't worry. If you have the will, there is a way to find the data. You need to have the will. Yes. Any more?
Sir, there is one more. I will take two more questions only. One from Moina Ghosh. He
ma'am,
asks,
ma'am,
Sir,
ma'am,
ha,
YouTube connection और नहीं
nahi?
ना
Oh,
Never mind. Never
acha.
mind. Let us go on.
Never mind. आपका question turn. Question turn ये नहीं? हाँ?
Okay.
Brilliant.
हाँ. Sir, how do you see the policy of privatization in various sectors of the nation?
Possibility of privatization.
Privatization.
Privatization is in. As I said, privatization was earlier also. Shantiniketan is a private effort. Okay. Many other places we had. But today, what I'm not opposed to privatization. I'm opposed to commercialization. Because if we keep on, commercializing everything on sale, then probably the future doesn't, to me, seem good. There has to be a balance. The state cannot withdraw completely. I know the tax base is very limited. Only 1.5 crore out of 100 crore pay the taxes. But you have to expand the base. It's for the state to worry about how to raise funds.
Deepak,
Yes, please.
also corporatization, not only commercialization but also corporatization.
Oh, corporatization you're talking now. Now,
I am Susnato Das.
বুঝতে পারছি দেখি আমি now corporatization, now we have new kinds of East India Company. Earlier the East India Company had to maintain its own army, police, magistrate, judicial system, everything, adalat, hospital, they ran. Now these days, this new kind of corporatization, they don't have to maintain this. The state will maintain the police and work for them. This is a very interesting development. And this Krishnato is known as now today, you have heard about mercantile capitalism, finance capitalism, and all kinds of different things, phases of capitalism. Now we have a new kind of capitalism which may be called platform capitalism. It is this platform capitalism which has brought you and me together right now. You are a beneficiary of this, isn't it? Google. So, how do you deal with it? Google is the new God. Most of your students, they no longer go to library. They sit on the Google and they get all the gyan they want.
Yes, Professor Google.
In fact, some of them astound me so much कि ये चेहरा देखने से तो ब्राइट नहीं लगता. मैं आई एम सॉरी टू से दिस, समटाइम मैं चेहरा भी देखता हूँ स्टूडेंट का, तो देखा ये तो ब्राइट लगता नहीं है, ये कैसे ऐसा लिख के ले आया इतना बड़ा चीज. वो सब गूगल ज्ञान है, वो मेरे से बड़ा लोग है सब. What do I do? Tell me.
Deepak I need an explanation from you
Hmm.
regarding Rabindranath Tagore as Chasha.
Hey,
In
अरे
what
but
way do you consider
विपाशा के
Tagore as
जिज्ञासा करो तो
Chasha,
विपाशा के
plowman?
जिज्ञासा करो. Bipasha would tell you more about it. She did a book called Tilling the Land. I was only a subordinate editor, and
No,
she has written books also on. I
yes,
believe that Tagore was a Chasa.
he was benevolent Jamindar. He
ना 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 बेनिवोलेंट जमींदार तो था वो देखिए लेकिन उसका आप you can't put him under he is a man where boundaries melt. I may be I know very little, but my feeling is I am attached to him for the simple reason that boundaries melt in Tagore. And when
okay,
boundaries melt, you can't call him only Zamindar. His son called him, his son-in-law called him Zamindar. Okay, agreed. वो बोला लेकिन वो एमहर्स को लाया श्री बहुत कुछ किया ऐसा थोड़ी है आप आज माइक्रो फाइनेंसिंग करते हैं यू लूटो लॉट्स ऑफ मनी एंड टुडे द बांग्लादेश इकोनॉमिस्ट हैज मेड सच ए ये थिंग बट ऑल दिस बिगन देयर टेगोर
okay, चलिए.
टेगोर्स वाज मोर इंपॉर्टेंट देन गांधी's trusteeship.
I have little disagreement with it.
Agreed. You have every right. But when you look at his poems on Chash, you see, how can you say he doesn't know the soul of the Chash? He knows. How could he write that? How could he write that? He had that. It is not that if you are elite. Satyanath Bhadri knows. I mean, yeah, even if he came from a Bengali Prabhasi family settled in Purnia, he knew Purnia better than the local Purnia people.
Yes.
तो ऐसे आप डिसमिस करने का ठीक नहीं है यही कर करके ना यू पीपल हैव गिवन प्लेस टू अल्ट्रा राइट यही तो बहुत यू थ्रू द बेबी विद द बाथ वाटर एंड द रिजल्ट इज टुडे नाउ यू आर इन ए very almost hopeless situation because we threw the baby with the bath water all the time. Please don't do it. Take people along. If I keep dismissing faith, then I lose my ground. I have to keep them together. This is what Gandhi tried to do.
Okay, Sahara, put your next question, please.
Please.
Should I take another question?
Please do.
Okay. Yes, we have Sheikh Minhazuddin. He is asking, sir, we have seen in history whenever a ruler tried to centralize India's regional powers, that there was some problem that arose, but that's what he means, and that it's the same scenario in India today. There is a trend towards centralization. Will it affect present politics?
Oh yes, centralization, excessive centralization is bad. Gandhi talked about decentralization. He was about village economy. Tagore talked about decentralization. They were not centralized people. Tagore wrote against nationalism. He wrote against boundaries, but today we are creating boundaries. Excessive centralization. Today, government of India is more powerful than Curzonian India. No governor general can match their power. Much more. More the concentration of power and centralization, more oppressive it is likely to be if it chooses to. If they want, they can use the police. They can use the army. They can do anything. You can see these days civil society, some of the people have been put in jail. So अब क्या करेंगे? Tomorrow if somebody comes and tells me no, your ideas are very disruptive, then what defense I have? Well, I would be very happy to go to, they will give me some food, some beating, no problem. But, I need to hold my head high. This is what Tagore said, Shushnato Babu. Keep the head high. Only a man of very great integrity could say this. Greatest integrity. And whoever he might be, whether a Jamindar or a Raja or a Rank or a beggar, whoever wants to keep the head high is the person to look at. And centralization, if there is excessive centralization, then ordinary citizen sometime will be asked to bow. Now in contemporary India, I would like to end this by citing two examples. When I was very young, undergraduate, BA History Honours, Patna College, one book that came to my hand was Hind Swaraj by Gandhi. I read some of the chapters. I found, oh, Gandhi is dismissing everything. He dismisses medical profession, lawyer, legal profession, talks about machine very strongly, etc. I said, no. Gandhi is not modern, and this will not work. I still agree with Meghnad Saha, when he criticized Gandhi and his economics in the very first issue of Science and Culture, 1934. And I immediately left that book. I felt कि भाई नहीं चल. It took me another couple of many years when I picked up Hind Swaraj again. Another book which came to my hand as an undergrad was Animal Farm, George Orwell. उसमें there is one मोटा सुअर, very powerful. His name is Stalin. आप उसका कुछ भी नाम दे सकते हैं, नाम का मेरे कुछ नहीं है. But he is very powerful. He becomes the leader, the supreme leader. And there are 50 or hundreds of pigs who clap for him, who clang thalis, etc. They are in millions now, everywhere. In US, in Brazil, in Turkey, in Russia, in China, everywhere. Wherever they are there. Animal Farm, which I laughed at that time, has become a reality. Look at the imagination, the literary imagination of George Orwell, that his Animal Farm sounds so close to me. I feel disturbed. I'm not happy about it. Color बदल गया. वो कोई लाल झंडा लेता था, कोई हरा झंडा लेता, कोई केसरिया वो लेता, वो गेरुआ झंडा लेता. लेकिन ये जो है मेजोरिटेरियनिज्म, और माय व्यू, आई एम करेक्ट, my country right or wrong, my mother drunk or sober, this is no good for the posterity. It may serve the short-term interest, not the long-term interest. This is what my argument has been. I may be wrong, but these are only these are the thoughts of whatever I could contemplate, think about last 10 years old. You can dismiss it as childish or as old man's babblings, etc. But future is in your hand, my students, whoever have listened, and they will run. They know their history. You should, I would end by bringing to your notice a beautiful book by Nigerian laureate Booker Prize. की नाम छिलो रे, भूल गया मैं उसका नाम. He wrote this famished Road, the novel. When I read it, it was so engrossing. I have ended that with my Trishanku Nation, the last paragraph, the last chapter is good. He says that the whole civilization, we are like on a road. Road is the unending road. History is like unending road. And we all are playing our role. And we tend to forget. We have the curse of forgetfulness. Every generation must rewrite its own history, must learn its own history. Every generation. There is no other option. Because we will keep forgetting. We have forgotten so much during the last 2 millennia of development. And it is quite natural. There is nothing wrong in forgetfulness. But The future generation must keep in mind that history will not lose its relevance. History per se, I'm not saying contemporary history, I'm saying history per se will never lose its relevance because history is in our genes. We have no option but to deal with it. Deal with it with the help of proper sources, and you will be fine. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I think I will end here, or should we take another question, sir?
Hey, I'm
Um,
tired.
may I,
I'm not
may
that
I,
old. Don't worry.
Huh.
uh, may I,
Yes. Yes,
may I
Shreya.
just intervene? Yes. Uh,
Yes.
Good evening.
Hi.
Yes.
Good evening. Yes.
Good
Yes, I can
evening,
see you. Hear
Rabindra.
you. Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you. Thank you very much for very insightful lecture as always. We have heard an excellent piece of uh, speech where we have seen, as always, blending of certain personal notes with academic, serious academic scholarship. Now, but what I find lacking in a way is addressing gender issues, because uh, I think one very commendable achievement of contemporary history, which should be mentioned, is um, a turn towards gender history or women's history, like which started from 1970s, but I felt that was missing in your lecture.
I fully agree. I bow my head, and yes, sometimes it misses. My problem
No, we
is
learned so much from
no,
you, so I just
no. You are
wanted to
absolutely
draw
right.
your attention. I
Sometimes I
hope you
miss it.
agree with that. Yeah,
No,
I hope you agree with that.
when I was working on Science and the Raj also, I had
Yeah.
heard of Kadamani Bose, who I had read about it, many things, but or Joshi, but this, while drafting, I don't know what happened. I don't know, and it happens sometimes. Maybe because
Because when you wrote, I think there is so lack of data
there
also.
was like no, I came across some. But
Right.
somehow the mindset, I agree with you. It was my mistake. It was my antenna couldn't catch. Even today, you are there. I know. I have read your book and so forth, and I know. My apologies. I have nothing to say in
No,
my
please,
defense.
no,
No,
not.
I agree.
I don't want to hear
You were
like
absolutely.
that, but I
But
just
yes,
want to know your take on that. I mean,
coming
don't you think
now,
contemporary history
I should. They should. Of course,
really
yes. Oh, yes.
served a
Gender
lot
issues.
to,
When I talked about literature, I quoted
right?
some of those, who are the male nayak. But of course, in Ganadevta, Durga appeals me most. More than Devu, I'm fascinated by Durga. You remember Ganadevta, isn't it? I'm fascinated by them. So there are many characters which has come to you, and yes, we have made a very distinct advance in terms of understanding gender issues, and in terms of last 30 years at least, and contemporary scholarship has not only talked about subalterns but has included not only gender, Dalit, maybe the people who are deprived of sections. I forgot to mention some of those. I could have, Ambedkar had, I could have taken more time then, but
Yeah.
I'm aware of that. These are the new areas where we have made significant progress, and where there is a consciousness. Even ordinary people are more conscious about it. Female education had grown, even in technical institutions, in engineering institutions, in scientific, in other places, in administration. That participation has grown, which is a very welcome sign. And
But we don't know what will happen after COVID. I mean, COVID might really, uh, uh, I
actually,
mean,
it has affected our women section more than
yes,
one
very
else.
much.
Very much.
Agree.
because they have to suffer the brunt of economic deprivation.
Right.
They will, even the food and everything, it is they who suffer most. So there is no doubt that this gender aspect of in terms of sociology, in terms of history, in terms of anthropology, in terms of politics and so forth has to be taken into account. It's extremely important. Again, it's very important that we continue to deal with those who are dispossessed, who are marginal. In fact, in Hindi, I did a book called Hashiye Parka Vritant with a colleague in JNU. I organized a meeting, and people on the margins, Hashiya is margin, people on the margins. This book has come out in Hindi from Vani Prakashan, but in English, I haven't written much on it. I should have. Even in Trishanku Nation, I'm sorry, maybe because of my, I don't know, bent of mind. I don't believe in, maybe the boundaries are melting. I don't know what's happening. वो woman का वो कई बार आता ही नहीं. When I use human men, they are included. As in the Asiatic Society motto, say whatever is performed by man. Jones didn't realize this, but performance to ज़्यादा female का ही है उसमें. What he meant probably was humans. So when I talk today in terms of contemporary history, what I mean is human. I missed on environment also, the human impact on environment, and how this should be. This is going to affect our future. So I fully agree with you, and henceforth I shall be
Happy.
little more careful. Little more careful. Thank you.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy that you agree with me. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you everyone for the questions. I don't think we'll take any more questions. I would request Dr. Shubhabruta Sarkar to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. On behalf of the Department of History, Rabindra Bharati University, I would like to thank Professor Deepak Kumar for delivering the first lecture in our web lecture series. Listening to Professor Kumar, my teacher, is always a treat. Thank you, sir, for yet another opportunity. We are grateful to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Shabboshachi Bosu Raichaudhuri, Registrar Dr. Shubir Moitra, he was there during your talk, Finance Officer Mr. Devdatta Roy, and the entire Finance Department for their encouragement and support. Professor Sujata Mukherjee is our guiding force at the department. We are thankful to Professor Shushnato Das, Professor Ashish Kumar Das, Professor Hitendra Kumar Patel, Professor Anuradha Koyal, Dr. Ajanta Vishwas, and Mr. Sheikh Ali Abbas Mahmood for their enthusiasm. Special thanks are due to Dr. Shahra Ahmed, head of the department, for her tireless effort to organize the web lecture series on new perspective in South Asian history. Without the help of our students and scholars, we can't organize such events. They are the pillar of strength of our department. Vipasha Datta, another PhD student, has provided the technical assistance. Finally, we are grateful to our virtual audience around the globe for their support. We are hopeful to get their support in the future as well. Keep safe in time of this difficult pandemic. Stay healthy and happy. Thank you. Over to Sharon.
Thank you very much, Shubho. Thank you all. I think we'll end here, and we look forward to your active participation in our future endeavors, and which will take place very soon. In the coming months, we'll have a few more web lectures.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Ma'am, feedback form.
Oh,
Feedback form.
Sharati.
স্ট্রিমিং বন্ধ করেছো?
না ম্যাম, আপনি বলুন ফিডব্যাক ফর্মটা 10 মিনিটস, আমি ফিডব্যাক
হ্যাঁ।
ফর্মটা দিয়ে অফ করছি।
Feedback form will be provided within another for 10 minutes. It will be provided immediately. Please fill up the feedback form correctly so that we can provide certificates which are correct. বিপাশা দরকার হলে আরেকবার টাইপ করে দিয়ে ফিডব্যাক ফর্মটা দিয়ে দাও।
Yes, done, ma'am. I'm ending the streaming, ma'am.